and feel it's actually hotter inside that ball. I've seen him already knock people over with it. He throws the chi in such a way that when he catches it, it knocks him backwards.
For Dillman, chi is like electrical circuitry that he can turn on or off with a simple, well-placed punch, or even just a tap.
We energy or give off chi.
Just gonna barely, it just happens.
I use ones to give off chi, put it into ones that accept chi. We, in essence, turn their light switches down. It kicks out their circuit breaker panel in the back. Pressure points can be dangerous. I've flatlined several people. To have it, you know you have it.
Dillman teaches these techniques in seminars all over the world, drawing attendees who are especially interested in finding out if his unusual karate techniques are real.
I mean, so many people have studied it and swear by it. I gotta see it for myself, though.
In the beginning, you're kind of like, well, I don't know if this is for real.
It's almost like a UFO setting. It's like, well, I gotta see it to believe it. You know, I hear these people do it, but until I see it, you know, it's one thing to hear, it's one thing to see.
They come to see Dillman's remarkable ability to move walls of people from 10 feet away when they can't even see him, by channeling his chi at them and interrupting their auras.
I lock with their aura, and I move the line. I shouldn't tell you this, but I play with people in Starbucks, and I just stood there and I moved the line. And they all moved, and they all looked back to me at the same time. They went like this, and I looked back too, like it was happening to me. I looked, because I didn't want them to know I did this, right?
But what really draws the audience's attention is Dillman's no-touch knockout, a karate move that could theoretically revolutionize combat as we know it, except that it can take years to learn. Essentially, he claims to be able to knock anyone out without touching any part of their body by just throwing a giant chi whammy at them.
Sometimes it drains me. I can get that way within a second or two if I throw the chi out too fast. Get back.
After seeing so many demonstrations, so many different techniques, so many different moves, you can't help but start believing.
They're opening up another door in your mind. It's just unbelievable.
I know I have chi energy. You can see it with the half moons. My chi is up now because of the filming. I have half moons in my fingertips now. That means the chi is just coming out.
But is the mysterious energy called chi really what's giving Dillman and his followers such extraordinary powers? Or is it, as skeptics suggest, simply a form of hypnotic suggestion? Later, we'll put this to the test, pitting karate master against scientist in an Is It Real showdown.
Deadliest Animals, tonight at 9 on the National Geographic Channel.
Welcome to Bali, the biggest beach games arena in the world. The place for Asia's finest athletes to be the best of the best. The place for you to witness the making of beach games history. The first Asian beach games, Bali 2008. Let the games begin.
The standard television set delivers up to 576 lines of resolution, while an HD television set delivers 1,080 lines of resolution. That's potentially up to 504 more lines in HD. Are you getting the full resolution? National Geographic Channel HD, in partnership with Samsung.
Yeah,
course of the top stories.
It's going to be a noisy, intriguing and exciting 30 minutes.
Sports Center. That's the show. It's Sports Center. We've got some more good news right here on Sports Center.
When the FBI or any other alphabet agency can't solve the crime
and cause of death,
it's time for NCIS to get on the case.
Go, go.
Is this a crime scene, Agent Canoso?
Drop the weapon.
There's a bomb set to go off.
I think he's dead, boss.
Follow Agent Gibbs and his team as they piece the clues together.
We'll do our best. We lost her.
In the brand new season of NCIS, Thursday night at 10, exclusively on Fox Crime.
This October on the National Geographic Channel. Dig up the clues, dissect the evidence. We reveal the truth behind the most mysterious stories ever.
It was terrifying.
The brand new series, History's Secrets.
Housekeeping.
Join photographer Jeff Hutchins and filmmaker Peter Hutchins as they rediscover a place they once called home. An original, personal, and stunningly beautiful portrait of a country in its moment of change. Somewhere in China, a brand new series. From aircraft carriers to the greatest constructions in the world, how far can we go? And how big can we build? Explore the evolutionary engineering leaps that enable different types of structures to explode. Big, bigger, biggest.
Definitely me.
Be the first to look into the production of one of the world's most popular dream cars. And exclusive access to how they create and modify a supermodel.
Nobody'd ever done this before.
The premiere of Inside Supercar. This October on the National Geographic Channel.
Chi is not the only kind of mystical energy that people claim to tap into in order to transcend normal human limitations. Recognize a spiritual energy infusing the universe, one that comes from Allah, sometimes called baraka, meaning grace or blessing. These whirling dervishes are perhaps the best known of the Sufi mystics. But whirling dervishes are not the only Sufi dervishes. These dervishes are from an order called Tariqa Kaznazaniya, and what baraka apparently allows them to do is nothing short of astonishing. During a ritual known in the West as deliberately caused bodily damage, they demonstrate the ability to wound themselves in various parts of the body with knives, spikes, daggers, and snakes. Amazingly, they claim to feel no pain. Also, the dervishes say that they don't suffer any lasting effects. Very little bleeding, immunity to infection, and almost instantaneous healing. These rituals are considered controversial by most mainstream Muslims. Are these seemingly superhuman feats really the result of tapping into energy from God? Or is there some sort of self-hypnosis involved? These questions brought the Sufi rituals to the attention of alternative medical practitioner Dr. Howard Hall, a specialist in hypnosis and healing, something the medical establishment once scoffed at.
My earliest work was in hypnosis impacting on the immune system. They thought that was a radical idea. But the notion that there's some energy field facilitating healing is even too much for them to accept and understand.
Hall, a clinical psychologist at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, traveled to Baghdad in 1998 to see if these Sufi rituals were indeed an act of God or just a case of group hypnosis. Hall learned that the spiritual leader, called a sheikh, channels the protective energy to the dervishes. He was invited to see for himself that this was not a matter of hypnosis, but a gift from Allah.
When I walked up, I was asked to pull out one of the daggers out of someone's skull. Couldn't pull it out, and I was cringing, and it still gives me chills when I think about that.
But to really rule out hypnosis as the source of protection, Hall made the decision to try the ritual himself.
Well, look, all these people are doing this. There must be something to it. But if they're all faking me, I'm going to find out right now. And that was a risk. I thought it was legitimate, but I had to empirically and evidence-wise prove that to myself. A translator came up to me, said, "Dr. Hall, are you ready?" I swallowed. Yes. And they said, First, seek permission from the sheikh to have you protected. You may have protection. He nodded. And the translator said, please open your mouth, Dr. Hall. And my mind was blown away. Wow, that's incredible. I'm not feeling pain. It's not like Novocaine. There was no major bleeding, maybe a drop or so, and there's no pain. I knew it wasn't hypnosis because I teach hypnosis, and I knew I wasn't particularly hypnotizable to endure that type of pain and show that kind of rapid healing through a hypnotic process. And I said, wow, we're on to something now.
Hall was so inspired that he became a student of Sufi mysticism himself. Later, Dr. Hall will pierce his cheek for us in the lab in order to obtain what he hopes will be an actual record of the energy transfer. And we'll hear from a performer called the Torture King, who says he can do the same thing without supernatural intervention. But now, on what you might call a lighter note, people who claim that they can tap into the universal life force in order to fly. Since the beginning of recorded time, humans have looked to the skies and dreamt of flight. In many religions, flight or levitation has been a sign of particular piety. Catholic Saint Teresa of Avila could supposedly lift off the ground for nearly 30 minutes. Indian sages were said to levitate as an act of homage to God. But perhaps the most talented flyer of all time was a Tibetan monk named Milarepa, who could walk and sleep as he levitated. Apparently, the ability to fly has largely been lost in the modern age. But at the U.S. headquarters of the Transcendental Meditation Movement, enterprising students are trying to change all that. They're here to learn to levitate using a three-stage process known as yogic flying, a set of Hindu meditation techniques introduced to the Western world by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. They do this by tapping into the Hindu version of Chi, the life energy suffusing the universe, called prana.
Yogic flying is an advanced meditation practice. What happens due to a mental technique, the brainwave becomes powerfully coherent. A lot of bliss and energy starts to flow through the physiology, and spontaneously the body springs. The first stage of yogic flying, the body can't hold still, and it starts to spring and hop and tries to fly. The second stage is when the body actually hovers in the air for a short while. And the third stage is mastery of the skies, when the body can fly.
The first thing you notice when watching people practicing the first stage of yogic flying is that it looks less like flying and more like hopping in the lotus position. The second is that these people are really happy.
Flying feels absolutely fantastic. Just before a person takes off, just before they levitate, they experience a great expansion of happiness. Even getting off the ground 1 inch is pure fulfillment. Second stage will be even better. And third stage, I can hardly wait to see 10,000 people flying in the air together.
Stage 3 sure looks a long way off. However, TM University researcher Dr. Fred Travis claims there are actual metabolic effects in the human body, even in stage 1 flying.
We look in that 1 second period, just before they actually lift up. There's broadband, which means it's across many frequencies, global coherence. And so the person is in a very different state of mind, different state of brain. We call it pure consciousness. And it's from there that the impulse to fly comes.
The claims escalate from there. They reject Newton's laws of gravity, saying they are hundreds of years out of date.
Newton's laws simply say that the human body will be held down to the Earth by the force of gravity, just as the moon is held to orbiting the Earth through the force of gravity. So if the body lifts up, it would be in defiance of these classical gravitational laws. We understand how you can overcome classical gravity and how the body can float and fly.
Perhaps not surprisingly, no one has gotten beyond stage 1 of the process, and the university won't predict when or if yogic flyers will ever truly fly. But they say it doesn't really matter, because they've found that even first-stage yogic flying produces an interesting byproduct.
Well, the purpose of yogic flying, especially in groups, is to create world peace. To put an end to this tragic legacy of violence and crime and terrorism and war.
That's right. They say if we can get a critical mass of people to practice flying, about 1% of the population, generations of Miss America contestants will get their wish. World peace. For now, TMers remain grounded for all but split seconds. But we did find one yogi who really does fly, in his own plane, thanks to the millions of rupees his avid followers donate in poverty-stricken India. Acharya Satyananda is a sort of celebrity televangelist, broadcasting his brand of fortune-telling and spiritualism to 250,000 followers in Calcutta. What's his secret? That same great universal energy that powers yogic flying, prana. By accessing prana, Satyananda claims to be able to read and manipulate people's minds.
I have a sixth sense, a power. People come to me with their problems. As soon as they enter the room, I know what their problems are. I read their minds.
During meditation, Satyananda claims, his mind leaves his body and gathers the electromagnetic powers of the universe. This energy enables him to exert his powers over the minds of his followers, even 6,000 at a time. But Satyananda has big dreams. One day he hopes to control the whole world. He's built a lucrative business empire, but he's not apologetic. In fact, he considers himself a more modern type of God-man. Traditionally, Indian holy men renounce all worldly possessions and live a simple life. Not quite the lifestyle Satyananda prefers.
Sadhus don't do anything for society. I want to do something because my followers give me a lot. So I'm starting an aircraft maintenance and engineering institute that will be the biggest in India.
But not everyone believes that Satyananda is tapping into vast energies unknown to science in order to control minds and foresee futures. Meet Guru Buster Prabir Ghosh, the scourge of Calcutta's so-called godmen. He's on a mission to rid India of certain gurus who he believes to be cheats and thieves. Little does our godman know, but Ghosh has a trap waiting for him, and it will take real superhuman powers to get out of this jam. In India, the tradition of godmen runs long and deep. They're conjurers that roam the country in a sort of traveling sideshow, demonstrating so-called miraculous powers. But not everyone in India is convinced that godmen are for real. Guru Buster Prabir Ghosh has spent years patrolling the streets of Calcutta, seeking to expose all forms of false claims and swindles.
We go after godmen and godwomen who claim to possess supernatural powers in order to show people that godmen have no such powers, and they are a danger to society.
In this city, he's had incredible success. Godmen are few and far between. So now, he and his team are taking the show on the road, touring rural Indian villages and drawing crowds of people by demonstrating how so-called miracles are performed. Ghosh says that India is a haven for unscrupulous godmen, all making easy money from even the most ludicrous claims. It's his life's work, exposing the godmen who make money by false means, especially those who prey on India's vast underclass.
Godmen make a fortune because villagers are ignorant and afraid of any misfortune coming their way. They'll tell villagers to offer prayers along with 2,000 rupees, otherwise their son might die. That villager will even mortgage his land to shell out that amount.
Today he is exposing a simple and common Godman trick, throwing balls of fire. The key? Just combine dirt with potassium permanganate, which is a component of flash powder. And voila, a giant fireball. Currently, the #1 most wanted Godman on Ghosh's list is our prosperous flying Godman, Acharya Satyananda.
He is an extremely wealthy man who cheats people out of money by using astrology. He scares people by telling them about problems that may not happen, and then charges them $100, double the monthly salary of most Indians. One can imagine how much he is exploiting people.
Prabir Ghosh has invited us along on his mission to expose Satyananda. Ghosh and his group of skeptics have set up an elaborate sting operation. He'll send in 2 teams of people, all unrelated, who will pose as family members. Each team will present Satyananda with a fictional problem they will ask him to resolve. As a Godman who can tap into the mystical energies of the universe to control minds as well as read them, he should surely sniff out the counterfeits and expose them before they expose him. This can be dangerous work. Ghosh was once attacked and had several ribs broken while exposing a Godman scam. Will Satyananda really be able to call upon his so-called sixth sense, read the skeptics' minds, and expose the operation?
Severed heads. A baby drowned. Bodies turned inside out. And a corpse of unknown species. Defy everything you think you know about killings in the animal world. The evidence never lies. Predator CSI, tonight at 10, right after World's Deadliest Animals on the National Geographic Channel.
The edge of drama.
I was born to make my life worth living!
The edge of comedy.
Find your pants anywhere?
And the edge of your seat. FX, the edge of entertainment. With Californication, The Riches,
Easy.
Big Show, Saving Grace, and more. There's a new home of cutting-edge award-winning TV in Asia. FX, the edge of entertainment.
This October, surf your way to Nat Geo Adventure. Let's get lost.
What a trip.
And add wonder.
What can you tell us about this community that people don't know?
Add action. Add danger. Adventure.
I've never done tourism where you get insulted before.
Make Nat Geo Adventure your next destination to explore.
Welcome to Bolivia, my friends. Welcome to Bolivia.
And lose yourself in this wonderful, beautiful, and amazing world this October on Nat Geo Adventure. Let's get lost.
To subscribe to Nat Geo Adventure Channel, call your local cable operator now. 2 men, 2 bikes, and an incredible journey from Scotland to the southernmost tip of Africa.
That wasn't on a film set. I was in the real deal, you know.
Long way down, Monday at 9 on the National Geographic Channel. Brought to you by Nokia. With Nokia Maps, you'll always find the places that you love the most. one of the greatest feats of archaeological engineering.
It's amazing.
This World Heritage Site would have been flooded underwater if the move had never been taken.
You could say we were trying to move a mountain.
How did they carry out such an impossible task?
Wow, look at that.
Monster Moves premieres on Mega Thursday at 10 on the National Geographic Channel.
The first team enters the guru's office. The only information he asks for is the young woman's date of birth.
October 1981.
After checking some charts, he tells the woman that she is unable to sustain relationships with men because her life is unbalanced. He then prescribes an expensive amulet that will protect her and gives advice as to the right person to marry.
Just went through a book and said, yes, these are the problems. In her horoscope, these are very dangerous signs, and she has to wear this medallion, which costs 5,500 rupees. I think it's not even 1 month's salary for these people who are sitting there. So you can imagine the amount of hoax, amount of cheating they are doing in the name of this. They are just scaring people like anything.
The second team meets with the guru and gets a similar treatment.
Date of birth? 25th October. 78 October.
Once again, he hands over a prescription that calls for purchasing a pricey amulet. The plan then moves into high gear. A text message is sent to Ghosh, signaling that it is time to confront the God-Man.
না না আমরা তো এখনই এখানে ঢুকলাম আপনি একটু ওয়েট করুন এর সাথে একটু কথা আছে
Ghosh then asks the team to retell the made-up stories to everyone, which causes an uproar. The guru demands that Ghosh return all of the documents he wrote, and his entourage starts to get ugly.
Once they realized that we were there to expose them and their fraudulent activities, their behavior suddenly became antisocial. They and their hired goons became violent towards us.
Satyananda's staff demands that Ghosh and his team leave the office. But not everyone gets out in time. The National Geographic producer, who has filmed part of the sequence, is still trapped with an angry Satyananda and his entourage.
We are here now at the Satyananda's ashram, and they have captured our director because we have proved him wrong. He's already fake, he's a fraud, and at the same time, he has hit the director.
The police are on the way. Yeah, they're on the way.
Thanks to the police, our producer escapes with only bruises. But Satyananda's revenge has only begun. 3 days later, while broadcasting his television program, Satyananda pleads with his followers to kill Prabir Ghosh. Satyananda is quickly arrested, and local politicians call for an end to broadcasts like his. In the end, apparently, the mystical energies of the universe deserted Satyananda.
When you look at Satyananda, you see the paleness of his face because he became nervous. Why is that? If he's such a powerful God-man that reads minds, why could he not read my mind too? This is how we expose Satyananda.
For the moment, it seems, Ghosh and his skeptical team have grounded Acharya Satyananda. But it's time to return to the more remarkable claims of people whose superhuman abilities, however gruesome, seem real. Are Sufi mystics who inflict terrible wounds on themselves really tapping into a spiritual energy that prevents pain, bleeding, and infection? Can a snapshot of that energy be captured in a lab? Or is this all something modern medicine can explain? As we saw earlier, Sufi mystics of the Tariqa Kaznazaniya order appear to be capable of inflicting terrible wounds on themselves and claim to experience no pain, almost no bleeding, no infection, and near instantaneous healing. How? Their leaders, or sheikhs, say they tap into spiritual energy of the universe that comes from Allah and protects them.
They say that they are channeling energy to heal people, and this sounds very improbable. What they're probably doing is sort of a placebo effect. If you believe it, it works.
Psychologist Dr. Howard Hall was so moved by the power of what the dervishes were doing that he tried it himself. Convinced that something other than self-hypnosis was involved, he became an initiate in the Sufi order. In search of evidence of the energy that protects him during deliberately caused bodily damage rituals, Hall has now joined forces with Dr. Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona's Center for Frontier Medicine, a leading institute in one of the most controversial fields of medical research, energy and spiritual healing.
When I first saw the footage that Dr. Hall brought back from Iraq, I couldn't believe it. In fact, I wondered, was there fraud involved? Once I became convinced that this was not just trickery, then the question was, well, gee, could you explain this as some sort of placebo effect? But as you look at instance after instance of phenomenal endurance of things that most of us couldn't possibly do, and there seems to be virtually no long-term damage, you begin to seriously question whether all of this could be explained as a simple mental effect. And then you start wondering, well, could the spiritual side of this be important as they believe it is?
Schwartz wants to determine what, if any, changes are taking place in the brain as Hall attempts to jam an ice pick through his cheek. But first, they need a measurement from a controversial device known as a gas discharge visualization instrument, or GDV.
The GDV system picks up electrical activity around the fingertips, and then using sophisticated computer algorithms actually presents a whole body image of the different regions, energy regions around the body.
GDV technology has its roots in a controversial process discovered over 75 years ago called Kirlian photography. In 1939, Semyon Kirlian found that if an object on a photographic plate is subjected to a high-voltage, high-frequency electrical field, an image is formed on the plate that resembles a halo. Some believe that this halo is a physical manifestation of the spiritual aura which supposedly surrounds us all. Scientists believe the halo is usually moisture. The effect is known as a corona discharge. Using the GDV, Schwartz is looking for evidence to show if Hall's personal energy field or aura changes as he injures himself with the ice pick. But first, they need to take a baseline reading. Now it's time for the test to begin. Hall is wired up to an electroencephalogram machine, or EEG, a device that graphically records the electrical activity of the brain.
When I do the piercing, I'm asking for specific aid for this intervention from the ancestors and the current sheikh.
In order to obtain this permission from the sheikh, Hall goes into a meditative state and says a series of mantras over and over again. The meditation period lasts nearly 90 minutes.
His brain did in fact go into a more relaxed state over the course of the prayer. We didn't see any anomalous things. He wasn't going into seizures. He wasn't going into a deep sleep state. He wasn't in a hyper-aroused state. His brain looked relatively normal.
He says that what we're about to record is the actual transfer of energy between the Sufi spiritual leader and himself. So, does he feel any pain?
Gee, you can open your eyes if you'd like.
No, it's just a dull ache. There was no physiological pain.
So, what you'll do is you'll take it out and then you'll close your eyes and just relax, okay?
I'll just check it.
Ready? Yeah, we're ready.
I'll make sure I got the right place.
Okay. Yep.
Now, will the wound heal as quickly as promised?
No blood?
And I'm going to lunch after this, guys.
That's good. By the way, there's no blood on the
Droplets of blood continue to trickle out.
as far as I can tell, for some blood.
It's usually a couple drops that come out. That's about the timing.
But after just a few minutes, Dr. Schwartz takes a closer look at the wound.
And it is, I can't even tell where it is. I mean, it's not obvious. A whole bunch of dots.
Was this result really caused by Sufi energy healing? Now the team looks to the GDV to see if Hall's aura was affected.
What this shows, which is the first time ever, is that if we compare the pre versus the post, we're seeing with the GDV a selective decrease in energy, curiously in the area where the actual skewer was placed through the jaw. You saw this gaping hole in the energy field in the area of the jaw, which was frankly much greater than I would have initially anticipated. Showing up in terms of...
Does the GDV show that a spiritual power intervened and protected Dr. Hall as claimed? Or is there a simple explanation?
Yes, I think it's possible that there is a simple explanation, but the simple explanation is one that Western scientists have difficulty with. The simple explanation is that this is actually coming from permission from divinity, that it really is involving a spiritual component, and that component is very, quote, simple.
We have a name for that which looks superficially like science, that uses scientific gadgetry, scientific jargon, but is fundamentally not science. It's called pseudoscience.
We'll be taking a much closer look at the rather mysterious GDV device later on. But first, let's meet a person who tortures himself not for spiritual purposes, but for money, and without the help of mystical energies. Meet Tim Cridland, a.k.a. Zamora, the Torture King. He performs a regular Las Vegas stage show where he inserts sharp instruments through his body. And he, too, claims to suffer no pain. But here, the similarities with the Sufis end. Cridland makes no claim to be doing anything supernatural.
It's the real thing. There's no trickery in it. There's a very thin margin of error. If I lose focus or concentration, I can get hurt very severely.
Does he not feel any pain, or does he just have an incredible tolerance for torture?
No blood, no pain, ladies and gentlemen. That is mind over matter.
We wanted to measure Cridland's abilities, so we went to see Dr. Joshua Prager, an anesthesiologist at the UCLA School of Medicine and a noted expert on the mechanism of pain. Using a device that delivers a low-voltage electric sensation, he'll determine what Cridland's pain tolerance really is.
Now we're going to change the frequency.
Most people score in the 4 to 6 range. Cridland's first attempt is a 20.
Your score basically puts you in outer space compared to the rest of the population.
And after one practice round, Cridland scores an off-the-scale 27. Dr. Prager believes that by using meditation and self-hypnosis, Tim has somehow learned to block pain signals from being processed by the brain at a nerve path called the descending pathway.
Okay, ready? Go. Well, I theorize that he activates the descending pathway, whether it be through some sort of self-hypnosis or some way of creating disattention. Clearly, he is able to change something in his nervous system so that
he can tolerate more pain.
So if Tim Cridland can tolerate pain by using meditation or self-hypnosis, could this be what's allowing Dr. Hall and the Sufi dervishes to not feel pain? Perhaps, but does this also explain the Sufi claims to be able to heal extraordinarily quickly? We went to Dr. Joseph Molnar for an answer. Molnar is a reconstructive surgeon who has operated on thousands of wound-related injuries. He thinks that the rapid healing has more to do with where the Sufis choose to wound themselves than with any spiritual power.
Many of the wounds that were created were put in places that are relatively silent. The man that put his sword through the chest looked to me that he was putting it through the skin and fat of his chest. We actually do something very similar in plastic surgery if we do liposuction of the chest.
But what about the wound created when Dr. Hall drove an ice pick through his cheek? There was very little blood, and the wound appeared to heal in minutes.
I'm not necessarily surprised with the amount of bleeding that I saw in that particular case. Anyone who's ever donated blood knows that you get some bleeding for a few minutes. If you hold pressure, it stops. Puncture wounds are relatively benign. It's not like you took anything out and then it filled in 2 hours. It was all there. It just had to close over a little bit and fall back into place. And that's what you expect with a puncture wound. I personally saw nothing that demonstrated anything that was clearly supernatural in the healing process.
But what about the GDV results that supposedly showed a decrease in energy in Dr. Howard Hall's aura? Does this really measure some mysterious energy in all living things? Is the aura the same thing as chi? And can some people really use chi to knock others out without even touching them?
We all love good food, but where do we find the ultimate guide to great eats? Get ready to indulge your taste buds as the National Geographic Channel serves up an all-new feast of fabulous food trends, succulent cooking secrets, exotic ingredients, and a concoction of world cultures from a gastronomic perspective.
At the end, it's all about taste.
The James Beard award-winning series Food Lover's Guide to the Planet, tonight at 8 on the National Geographic Channel.
For someone who has traveled in China as much as I have to say that Lijiang is one of the best preserved and cleanest cities I have ever seen. Lijiang is home of the Nashi, a very vibrant local minority. You know, I think the Nashi people are really lucky to be living in an area as beautiful as this. The Nashi religion is basically nature worship, and of course one of the elements that they worship is water. You could argue that they were the first green people, the first environmentalists. They believe that man and nature have to live in harmony. And so preserving the planet is about the most important thing we can do for our children.
This is fun. This is wild stuff.
Star World brings you a series that showcases the best of SNL.
That's great.
Featuring memorable characters.
I'm Barbara Wawa.
Impersonations.
Look at my butt.
And musical acts.
Sit back. Sit back.
I think we're going to surprise some people. The best of Saturday Night Live. A new season starts Saturday exclusively on Star World. Take a tour with us to the US of A, where success is measured by expanding wealth and rolling it over in style.
You're going down the highway and you can just sit back. It's effortless.
We take apart the American Dream on wheels to show you how it's put together. Super Factories on Mega Thursday at 9 on the National Geographic. Deadliest Animals, tonight at 9 on the National Geographic Channel.
Milan, home to Italy's stock market and business centers. and it's fashion and shopping capital. It's also home to two of the world's most famous skeptics, chemist Luigi Garlascelli and psychologist Massimo Polidoro. Massimo writes prolifically on all kinds of supernatural phenomena. Luigi is the hands-on type. He'll subject himself to almost anything to make a skeptical point.
I think it is important for scientists to investigate strange claims because it is the job of science to discover what still is unknown, and it is what scientists do all the time.
I don't think it is possible for a person to transfer his or her energy to another person. If it really happens, then it should be investigated with the instrument of science.
Massimo and Luigi are quite familiar with the GDV device used to test Dr. Hall's aura while he pierced his cheek. In fact, they've built their own version. Like the GDV, it's based on Kirlian photography, but it exposes a few problems with GDV as a tool to measure life energy.
In this device we have a high frequency generator and a high voltage generator.
Together, they produce a low-intensity electric charge that's safe to human touch.
This is neat.
It's also equipped with tanks of helium and neon gas that are pumped to a sealed chamber under the surface plate of the machine. When an object is placed on the plate, the electrical charge excites the gas molecules, causing them to glow and creating what looks like the object's energy field or aura. But if this is supposed to be a life force, like an aura or chi, why is it just as powerful in inanimate objects?
It certainly does not capture an aura or a psychic energy or whatever. This is a machine that works by itself, and whatever you put on top of it, a hand, a shoe, scissors, anything, it just shows a glowing light. But it is not a light coming from the object, it's a light coming from the machine.
So the GDV device that was supposed to measure an energy field may only be measuring natural phenomena like temperature, pressure, and humidity. Now it's time for Massimo and Luigi to turn their attention to the most hair-raising use of mystical energies we've seen so far. Throwing chi to knock someone out without even touching them. Massimo reviewed the tapes of George Dillman and his followers performing such no-touch knockouts and was not impressed.
The people going there expected what was going to happen, and they were expected to react in a specific way. And they just reacted to the suggestion. When this happens in hypnotism demonstrations on stage by a magician, which doesn't use hypnosis at all, just give suggestions, and people who is ready to believe that kind of things.
But critiquing a tape and standing up to a karate master are completely different matters. It's time for a showdown. In one corner, weighing in at no more than 125 pounds, is chemist Luigi Garlascelli. He thinks he can stand up to a knockout punch of chi because it doesn't exist. In the other corner, it's 8th degree black belt Leon J., one of George Dillman's top associates and fellow practitioner of the no-touch knockout. This ought to be interesting.
In fact, when we did the test on Luigi, who was not ready to believe these things, or maybe was just staying there, seeing what would happen. It didn't work.
Dillman thinks he knows what went wrong and has come up with a very interesting explanation.
The skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus, I don't know if I should say that on film, but if the guy had his tongue in the wrong position of the mouth, that can also nullify it. Yeah, you can nullify it. You can nullify a lot of things done to you. In fact, you can nullify them if you raise those two big toes. If I say I'm going to knock you out, and you raise one toe and push one toe down, can't knock you out. And then if I go to try again, you reverse it. If you keep doing this, I won't knock you out.
Good to know. But there is another explanation. Perhaps chi, prana, baraka, all of the mystical energies that give mere mortals the capacity to do things that seem beyond the reach of normal humans, do so only because we believe in them. They give us the power to transcend pain and overcome physical and mental limitations because we buy into them. But even if nothing supernatural is involved here, there is a power that one has to marvel at. The power of the human mind.
Well, the skepticism can be taken too far, can be counterproductive. A little skepticism is a good thing. Too much of it really retards the progress of civilization.
There certainly is a lot of people that need these claims to be real, sticking to some kind of these beliefs that says you are special and you just need to develop your powers to become better than the others, and whatever is important to them.
Just shot scenes for a movie where I'm a detective and I do some of my no-touch stuff in the movie. Now we'll see if the public believes that. I don't care if they do or don't, it's in there and it's for real. I won't allow trickery. Who are you fooling? You're only fooling yourself.
To the extent that we make people believe there are special powers that exist, we start people believing in falsehoods. And there's an ethical point there, I think, that it goes beyond entertainment then to some paranormal claim.